All right. Hello, beautiful community, and welcome to the Goddess Glow, the Red Lip Alchemy Chronicles. This is a sacred space where Black femmes, as African descended creatives, come together to connect, converse, and radiate all of our brilliance. This podcast honors the divine power within us, weaving African diasporic practices, indigenous traditions, ancestral veneration, and restorative rituals into a tapestry of personal and communal alchemy. Through bold storytelling, spiritual exploration, and collective wisdom, we celebrate the red lip as a symbol of rebellion, beauty, and sacred sisterhood. Join us today, or I guess I should say thank you for joining us today because you're here to celebrate our power, to honor our ancestors, and to glow unapologetically. My name is Tiffani, and I am bringing your Afromaximalist magic.
I'm Ebony. I'm Ebony Flow, bringing the sensual and a little bit of love for Valentine's Day.
There you are.
Hey everybody, I'm Professor K. I'm a little tired today from driving. I was gonna say from transporting, but from driving. So I'm bringing I'm here for the energy that comes with being in this sacred sisterhood.
Mhm. All right. Well, speaking of that, do we want to do some check-ins? So, how have your weeks been, goddesses? Let's start with you, Professor K.
I've had a good week this week. I finished up a writing thing that I needed to finish up, so that felt good. Still making progress on the house. The altars thing is altering, right? So just in the progress of getting the altars together, and it's the work before the work for that, right? Like the cleansing and the getting things in order. So this has been really helpful for things that have been on my list for a while at my house. That it's like, oh, I have to do this in order to do that thing. So it's been helpful for that. What else happened this week? There's been a lot of wonderful community events happening in Savannah. So I've been enjoying some of those community events. And in terms of like we were talking about our bodies a little bit earlier as well, I've started doing this strength training with where it like kind of tells me what to do so I don't have to figure it out every week. So I like taking the guesswork out and knowing like, oh, this is the thing that I'm doing today. And I did do my class this morning before I got on the road, so I felt good about that. So a long way of saying I've had a good week.
Awesome. What about you, Eb Flo? What's been going on this week?
My week it's been trying. It's trying my body. Had a little injury in my leg, but other than that, it's been really good. Same with the altar, as Professor K, really just trying to clear, cleanse, make space for something new because I've had one altar, but not an ancestral altar that was separate. So I'm looking forward to really diving in and continuing to build that. But what I really appreciated about this week as well is that these lessons, these weekly lessons, have been rippling into my family. So, my son, he's like, "What's this? What's this you reading?" And so he's getting goddess lessons. I spent some time in San Diego. I teach class there every week, and I was with my daughter who lives there, and she was asking some questions and about last week's podcast, and she said, "Oh, are you talking?" I never said the name. I was just describing. She said, "Are you talking about Tisba?" And like she's like, "Oh, I read all about that. I have a book." And she's expressing excitement. And so then we had a long conversation around it. And so it's really great to bring all of those conversations, not just in this space with you, beautiful women, but also with my children, and continuing to allow it to ripple out into the family.
I love to hear it. I have had a pretty good week as well. I worked in the ED last weekend. I'll be back again this weekend on Sunday. And this week has been, I've been able to focus a lot more. And I think part of that is because I have been getting my office back together. And so without having my desk cluttered with 100,000 things, it has helped to declutter my brain so that I can focus a little more as well. So it has overall been a good week for me. And Professor K, oh, I love that you changed your name to Professor K. Commit to the bit. Professor K was all into last week. It had her in a chokehold. And I feel like this goddess this week is one that I particularly resonated with. So let's get into it and let's talk about this week's goddess and our reflections. So this week's and again, so we are reading from the African Goddess Initiation book. In our current temple that we are in, we're basically focusing on the root chakra right now in the temple of the ancestors. So our soil energy is being channeled this week. So I'm gonna do since I was like all in on this goddess, I'll do a brief description of her. Forgive me, goddess, because I might not be saying your name correct, but Mbuya Nehanda. Is that what we're going with, ladies? All right.
That's what
So
I'm going with. That's exactly how I was saying it.
Mbuya Nehanda. Mbuya represents grandmother, and it's a way of kind of similar to us calling each other aunties. It's a way of giving respect to different generations of women. And Nehanda is the name that is tied to a royal lion spirit. So looking back in time for centuries, this is a spirit who has been channeled by women revolutionaries and leaders, but one of the most well-known Nehandas is Sharwa Nyakasakana. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So she was a spiritual leader and a revolutionary who led Zimbabwe's first major resistance against British colonization. So she was born somewhere circa 1840, and she was a powerful spiritual medium. So it was believed that she was able to channel this ancestral spirit of Nahanda. When you talk about her history, so I did I'm not unlike Professor K. I do have a library, but my stacks ain't quite as deep as hers. So I didn't have a book on Nahanda, but I did do a little Google reading and additional reading on her. And so one of the things that I found interesting is that it notes that she was married and she had two daughters and a son, but the name of her husband was not recorded in history. And I don't know, it was something about that that just resonated with me. I think particularly like living in this society where women are literally classified based on their marital status. Like men are just Mr., regardless of whether you're single, divorced, widowed, but women, we get classified based on our relationship status. So there was something very powerful about this warrior goddess who, was her husband's name is unknown. And thinking about, in modern times where we see on these internets, different husbands and baby daddies acting out. And it's like, you need to stop and just recognize that you just the baby daddy of Keke Palmer and ain't nobody really checking for you. Your name will not go down in history, sir. So I love that little tidbit about her. But she became Mbuya Nehanda and really in like she was like 50 years old when this all started to go down, and she really leaned into her revolutionary leadership. And so that also resonated with me as we are women of a certain age. None of us are 50 yet. But how much more powerful is that? Like, look at how wonderful and fabulous and amazing we are in our 40s. And I can only imagine what we're going to unlock as goddesses once we get to those golden years of 50s. When it gets to her revolutionary leadership, she was born during the time and kind of doing the spiritual work during a time when there were lots of colonizers in the world. So the British came to Zimbabwe. They manipulated the king and made this agreement that resulted in displacing the indigenous African people, stealing their land, draining their natural resources like their mineral and gold, and enforcing forced labor and taxes. And so that is when Mbuya Nehanda became a central figure in what they call the first Chimurenga or War for Liberation that took place between 1896 and 1897. And this was the first big uprising against colonial rule. So she, along with a couple of other leaders, really spearheaded these efforts against the British South African Company. Now, sadly, the British resources and their weaponry were able to violently suppress this movement. And so in the book, African Goddess Initiation, she says that Nehanda turned herself in order to kind of prevent additional loss of life from some of the other uprisers. If you look at other sources online, they say that she was captured. But either way, the records indicate that she was tried for killing of a British officer. It's something about reading that also that kind of made me think about like Asada, who was, tried for for killing an officer and have to flee. But she was captured and she was executed. And when you read about her story of execution, there's some lore that they had to try to hang her twice. And even with that, like her body would not die and her spirit would not die. And somebody in the crowd said, take her mojo away from her, take her this like satchel that she had. And once they took her mojo away, then that is when they were able to take her physical body away from this earth. One of the things that really resonated with me, even in her death, they were trying to convert her to Christianity and she refused to comply. And she had a defiant declaration in the last moments that she was able to breathe, saying that my bones shall rise again. And so these words were really prophetic and powerful, because when you fast forward 82 years later, there was the second Chimurenga, where the resistors were ultimately able to defeat colonization and gain Zimbabwe's independence in 1980. So that's the story of Nehanda. And so let's check in with you ladies. I shared some of the parts that resonated with me. Are there any parts that resonated with you as you were reading the story?
I'm always here for the revolution and the emphasis on, like, I appreciate resistance because there are all of these false narratives around us not resisting in various historical moments, but I also appreciate the emphasis that we're not only resistors, right? And so like we resist when we have to resist because of the things that are coming for us, but we also have these livelihoods, these connections, these communities, this culture that it's important to celebrate and uplift. One of the things that stood out to me in which you were just sharing about her husband's name being unknown is that photo of Zora Neale Hurston, and it's like Zora Neale Hurston, an unknown man, and it's like one of my favorite photos
I
because
was
like
thinking about that because we
we
posted
came here for
afterwards.
Zora.
We're here for Zora, and who cares about this unknown man? And then remember, I posted on social media that picture of you at Carnival, like
Yes,
Kathryn Sylvia Bell and unknown man.
unknown man.
Like, nobody checking for these
That's
bitches.
so funny.
So yeah, that was just something that stood out when you talk about her husband's name not being known, because as you said, like so often we're identified with women are identified with their marital status and with their husbands, and just as like Mrs. or Misters, literally, right? And oftentimes it's the wife or the wives whose names are unknown or who do not get the proper reverence. So I appreciate that she is known, that she was known to her community, and that she is known to us.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I was doing the deep dive too, Tiffany, and I thought of Sarah Bartman again, just based off of the remains still, being held, and found this website called Bring Back Our Bones, which I was not familiar with before, but just they still haven't been able to recover and bring her remains back to bring them back home. And so I was just thinking of how many others, like I think the British Museum was like, oh, we have 22,000 remains. And I was just thinking of just how many of our ancestors are sitting in basements of museums that deserve to be back in their homes. And so I was sitting with that this week as well. But I think what really stood out to me was reading about the ability to be reborn again, and rising again, and really connecting that back with the cards that we pulled last week of just like it just really felt very connected to the conversations we've been having around liberation and our ability to reinvent ourselves. And so there's just a message that continues to be reinforced around that this is our time. And so and then just a lot of excitement around the work that we're all individually doing too. And so I spent a lot of time in my meditation this week. Hope y'all felt it, ladies. Just sending all the good juju. I actually ended up I felt compelled to pull another card this week, and so I pulled good juju. Oh, I have my my screen blocked. And so I ended up pulling Marie Laveau, and this is the good juju card. And so I and just focused on like all of these good things are coming to you, claim them. But one of the things that really stood out to me in this card pulling was the message of you provide so much for other people and you build that for them, you deserve it too. So you need to claim that good juju for yourself as well. And that's, I think, a part of my reborn again is recognizing I do have a lot of good things in my life and I feel really good and healthy. And also, I know how much I pour into others. And so there's also some opportunities there for me to also remind myself that that good juju is there for me. So that's that reborn again piece that I think really resonated for me.
Amen and Ashe. Yeah, I definitely was making that Sarah Bartman connection and thinking about her bones. And so I was doing a deep dive in that. And I think that resonates with me, particularly as a physician and as a scientist, right? So when you think about the British Museum that has over 25,000 skeletons, right? And where do those skeletons come from? Some come from these anti-colonial resistors whose bodies and bones were literally taken as souvenirs and trophies of war, but others come from scientists of the time who were doing research on Black bodies. And so some of that research included measuring the skulls of Africans in comparison to Caucasians. And what this pseudoscience did was they came to the conclusion that Africans had smaller brain volumes and were actually a completely separate species from Caucasians. And so it was like this pseudoscience and this harm that was being caused in these early forms of racism in medicine and science that helped to support and uphold slavery and white supremacy. And so me being a physician now and seeing the ways in which that's translated into how patients receive care in the present time. So, when you look at this, research on bones and skulls, there was actually a study done less than 10 years ago with medical students and residents that showed that they have these false biological beliefs about Black people, that we have thicker skin and stronger bones and experience less pain than white people do. And what was important about that was that these false biological beliefs were linked with racial differences in how pain is managed. And so I really connected with just kind of this legacy and that, her bones did rise again, but also we're still kind of, seeing some of the negative consequences even within society today. So as Zimbabwe is still fighting for her rematriation and trying to bring her back home, it's a part of a bigger struggle that we are all working towards for improving the health and the well-being and bringing liberation to people all across the diaspora, including here in the United States. So that definitely resonated with me. And then I think I connected with this goddess because have been going through a rebirth process. So I was really thinking a lot of, so I think before we started recording, if you look at pictures of her online, there are pictures of her kind of wearing capes similar to the one that I have on today, including a statue that was erected for her in, I think, 2021 in Zimbabwe, and she has on this cape. And so this is a cape that I wore on my 40th birthday. And I was doing a lot of reflection on where I was at that time versus where I am now at 42 and a half. And just remembering that, I have been going through this process of rebirth. So I was having like a lot of inner turmoil around like, who am I and what contributions am I supposed to be making in the world? And so I've been just really proud of myself and feeling myself in the past 24 hours and thinking about that work that I've done in letting parts of my old self die and in shedding some of those things that no longer serve me into being reborn and really just kind of stepping into my power and the impacts that that's going to have on me as well as in my community. So it's been really, really great connecting with this goddess this week. And also just thinking, I've been so curious about how the author of this book, how she categorizes different goddesses. But kind of when we think about like this root chakra in the soil, and so been thinking a lot about her bones and literally our bones returning to the earth and how we can bring her back so that she can become rooted and draw up energy. Let's see what else was going on in our goddess initiation reading this week. So We talked about our goddess. And so she is the goddess of rebirth, and connecting to the still all rise. And so the rebirth ritual for this week was ancestral altar. So you guys touched a little bit on it, but tell us what your ancestral altars mean to you. Where are you in the process? We never get our, well, I shouldn't say never, and I should speak in I statements. My rituals with this book are ongoing. It's never, I'm getting this done by Friday. But I
Way.
do appreciate that. It's not just a one and done, right? It's like an ongoing process that resonates with me as a maximalist. I'm just always kind of constantly layering and layering. But so we had our initial goddess altars were one of the first, one of the earlier activities we had. So let's talk about our ancestral altars and where we're putting them and how our ancestral altars differ from our goddess altars.
We be waiting, looking to see who I'm muting, who's going. Double Dutch, double Dutch. Um, yeah, so I literally just I started clearing the space for my ancestral altar. And you know, interestingly enough, again, it just keeps being interconnected. Even the food I was eating this week, I was like, Dad, would you like that? Right? Like, you know, would you want this on the altar too? So just really kind of just really connecting with my spiritual ancestors in that way. But mostly I've just been pulling the photos that I want on there, the cloths that represent the colors that they loved. And just thinking about how will I hold the time to make sure that they're honored as well, because I've been intentionally trying to spend time at my other altar. And so now I'm like, okay, and then I've got them in two separate rooms. So then also just making sure that I find my time in between both, and prioritize it in my day is what I've been kind of just sitting with this week. So work in progress, but I love what it's bringing up, and how I'm able to focus in on that.
What about you, Professor?
So I know where I want to put it. There's a table there now, but I actually don't want the table that's there. I don't want there. So so I just have to kind of rearrange some things and change what's there for that altar. But also I do have some photos and some other images. What I really want to do, I think, is make like a collage with photos and some other images from magazines and things like that. So I do want to embrace like a more creative process. And then I think maybe follow up with Queenie BB around some stories around like, because I love books. So I'm thinking like, okay, maybe we could get favorite books or, you know, those kinds of things where I can feel that connection with some of the ancestors. And then also who gets to be on there and who doesn't get to be on there has come up come up for me as well.
You want to
Um,
share more about who you are not including in your altar?
Not necessarily who I'm not, like, I know who I am included. So I think I'm just like, oh, I'm really clear on who is being included. And then I'm also like, yeah, no, we weren't like not necessarily that cool. You know, I don't have like animus toward anybody necessarily, but I don't necessarily want to invite some folks in my house. So I'm like, so we can kind of divide who we connect with and who, you know, we connect with separate parts of our ancestry as sisters. So I'm sure you have some people covered that I do not, and I have some people covered that you do not. And so that works for me. I don't necessarily feel a particular kind of way about that. I did also appreciate, even before she got to the altars, like the section that was in the gray about rebirth, which goes back to what you were talking about before you asked us about the altars. You know, I love this reflection on, you know, life and change, and we're constantly being reborn, like daily, literally daily, but also, you know, we have these cycles and these different parts of our lives. And there are like rebirth also includes deaths of like old versions and old forms of ourselves. And so I really have gratitude for the various lives that I've already lived and the deaths that I've already experienced and the rebirths that I've already experienced. And then I was also thinking today as I was driving here about, you know, the this too shall pass, like whatever comes up. Like I was reflecting, I was reading because of the full moon this week. I was reading like earlier in my journal, which went back to like early January, like late December, early January till now. And the things that were on my mind that I was not at ease about have all been resolved, right? And I'm like, like you just kind of need to give some things, not just give it some time. Like there was intention and meditation and other things that went behind that. But it was just like, wow, this was really a thing for me like 90 days ago, and it is no longer a thing for me right now. So I just got a lot of encouragement from that reminder of like something can really, and also when there's a thing that is a thing, it's an indication that something needs to be done, right? It's not some terrible whatever
Mhm.
on you. It's just like the lack of ease is a reminder to get back to ease, right? And so when something doesn't feel like, so for me, it was just a reminder of like misalignment is a lesson. Our emotions are teachers, our bodies are teachers. When things don't feel misaligned, it helps us orient ourselves toward getting aligned. And I'm like, oh, I feel so much more aligned now because I paid attention to that misalignment and did something about it. And now it's like taken care of. So yeah.
I have a question. Well, and both for the both of y'all, just in regards to placement. I was struggling like with where, and I ended up landing it in my office space. Because I had gotten a reading before the pandemics. I want to say like 4 years ago, but we know the pandemic messed our years up. It was probably like 8 years ago. But a part of that, I was able to have some conversation with my father who passed away when I was 19. And so, a lot of his encouragement is around taking care of myself and being able to weave in how I'm caring for myself into the work I do so it doesn't feel like work. And so I decided, and I ended up saying like, yeah, I'll bring it into this space. But at first I was like torn, like, I don't know if I want my ancestors in my same space that I'm doing work. But if work is my heart work and my purpose, then I ended up kind of being like, yeah, this is where it's going to be. But I'm just curious if y'all had different spaces around where you placed or where you considered, or if you already had a place and you just knew exactly where it was going to go.
Yeah, I'll say for me, so my initial altar that I have, I think is now like has been and will continue to be the ancestor altar. And then I've kind of repurposed and relocated the goddess altar that we started to my foyer. And I think the foyer resonated with me for the goddess altar because that's where I ended up putting that like tree of life bookcase. And I have these Barbies from like the 90s that are like these goddesses that I want to like they were designed by a black designer, and so they're like a part of my goddesses, and so I'm like this is kind of that has become my goddess altar. And then so my original altar, which is in my meditation room, is which already has pictures of the ancestors, is I think going to remain as my ancestor altar. One of the things that she says in the goddess initiation book is, and other people have said this as well, like keep the ancestors separate from the people who are here. And I have pictures of me and people of my like living ancestors on there too. And I think I'm going to keep them because it's my altar and I can do what I want to do with it. And so I think that that is important too, though, as like there are recommended ways to do things and different like spiritual guidance. But at the end of the day, like these are our spiritual practices and it's okay to make them individual and to do what resonates for you. One of the things that I'm realizing as we are kind of working on these altars is that although like I have that altar like right now, it's like literally a dusty ass altar in a room that I like go into once every 7 weeks maybe, right? And so this has been a reminder for me that any relationship that you care about takes time and energy into it, right? And so whether that's your romantic relationship, friend relationships, familial relationships, like we have to put the time in. And I have not been putting the time in terms of my relationship with my ancestors. And like they literally live in my house, right? And they literally protect me. And yet, like I haven't, always taken that time to make sure that their altar is clean and to make sure that they have water and to, give them different foods and scents and fragrances. And so this has been a good reminder for me that like to instead of just keeping that door closed and not going into that room, to like open it up and let them like dance freely around the house, but also just having that door open as an invitation for me that like the door is open for me to go and sit with them and to commune with them on a regular basis and to just be more intentional about that. So for me, it's more like dusting off the altar. And I do want to spend some more time on the exercise of just like writing a letter to your ancestors and sealing it. And so that's something that I want to work on. Maybe that'll be my Valentine's Day activity today, is showing some love to the ancestors and writing a love letter to them and a love letter to myself.
That's
Love that.
beautiful. Mine is, so my goddess, so I have like a bookshelf in my bedroom now that is like a kind of self-love goddess yoni altar. And then in the hallway between the bedrooms, which is kind of the center of the house, is where I'm putting the ancestral altar. So I have like a picture of a woman that reminds me of the original Catherine Bell that I got, I think, in Martinique. So there's like a huge framed piece of art there. And then under that is where I'm gonna put the altar. So there's like a wider table there now, but I'm gonna replace that with a bookshelf because I love bookshelves and the different layer, the different sections that you have in bookshelves. So that's a long way of saying the ancestral altar for me is gonna go in the middle hall, which is kind of the core of where the house is, but also that I pass by frequently. So mine are in places that I do see, that like my altar in my bedroom is like literally right next to my bed, and I have like a meditation pillow and stuff there. And then the ancestral altar is going to be in the hallway. It's kind of there already, but I need to also, like, Kalia has repurposed it for like earrings and I'm gonna have to go back and
And
anyway.
to the red lip alchemy, they just a part of it now.
So like there's other stuff there. So actually so now I'm like just getting into the weeds with it. But I think what I'm going to do is take the table that's in the hall now and just put that in their room so that they could use that for that purpose. And then I will put the bookshelf in the hall so that it can be used for the altar purpose and like have that conversation. And then I have a mantle over my fireplace, which is more like the kind of living family prayer altar. So that has like I have these rocks with the kids' names on them. So those are on that altar. The bowl that we made with the give it over to the goddesses, that's on that altar, like incense and that kind of stuff. Oh, actually the black sand that you brought back from Iceland, like that's one of my earth elements there. So and now where I work out is also in that room, in the living room. So like I see that altar every morning. Like, but now that I've cleared some boxes out of the way with all of this altar work we've been doing, because I literally couldn't walk to it before, but the clearing that's been happening with our process, like I have access to that as an altar space now. So, but they're all like, nothing's like shut back behind a closed door, or I'm not, I literally pass those spaces every day. So I think that helps with being more attentive to it. Yeah.
Mm.
But again, like literally, like my yoni stuff was literally still in a box from when I moved. Like I had it.
Gotta unbox the box.
I unboxed the yoni, man. Like, listen. And
Give it
that,
some
like,
attention.
I felt an immediate, like, the shift was instantaneous. Like, oh yeah, like I have been really intentional about this yoni journey and my erotic empowerment. And what was I doing, like boxing this stuff up? So like the shift was like instant as soon as it was like, yes, we are free again. Like, don't be putting us in a box.
That's right. I love it. Love it. And I love, Tiffani, even you saying that, you're choosing to do what feels right for you. And that was something that I read. We shout out to Tiffani for another book, Decolonizing the Body. And it says like our bodies have this way of knowing. So we don't have to be boxed in by rules that are set. It's what feels right and what resonates well in our bodies. And so it's good to hear you say, yeah, this is all going in one spot and I'm gonna do what I do because it feels right for me.
Amen and Ashe. Because like I'm a living ancestor and I want to be on my ancestor altar. Look out for me. It hasn't brought me any bad juju yet, mixing the day. And then in terms of who's there, so like the pictures that I have right now, I have pictures of Auntie Sherry, who is our not blood auntie, but community auntie, who is the librarian. I have one of the magazines from the OG Catherine Bell, and then a picture, of Serena, one of the bespoke picture that I have of the family. I have hers in that room. It's interesting because when I think I was putting that altar together, Queenie BB did send like pictures of our Aunt Robin. She's like, "Oh, you can have this if you want to put it on there too." And I didn't put her on there, and it's like I didn't know her. You know, she died by suicide when I was maybe 2 months old. But she's somebody who I don't necessarily have a negative relationship with, but she's not somebody who I feel, you know, particularly connected to versus, you know, Auntie Sherry, who, again, of all of my mother's friends, you know, like there's another friend of hers who has passed away, Aunt Betty. And I think actually there's a picture of me and you and Aunt Betty on that altar as well. But even though I probably spent more time in my life with Aunt Betty, like Auntie Sherry is my ancestor. And so just, you know, honoring that. I do have a thing with, especially with OG Kathryn Bell, because, you know, she is the person who I cohabitate this house with. And I let her know, like, this is your house. And you are free to bring in any of the ancestors who want good for me. And so like have a party, bring anybody you want to bring. You know, our mother tells a story of Muhammad Ali hitting on her when you know, she was young. Like, so if you want to bring Muhammad Ali, bring him, like bring whoever you want to bring, but only people who want good for me, and anybody who does not want good for me and who will like mess up the energy, like you can be the gatekeeper and not allow them in the house. And so that is something that I am entrusting her to do. And I feel like she has been a good steward and has not violated those boundaries yet. So I appreciate her for that. All right. So go ahead,
Well,
Professor.
I was gonna say, how are we doing on time? Do we need to switch to cards? Because I think we're wrapping up a little bit earlier than usual. Yeah.
Let me, I don't know why I act like I don't know what's happening every week. But my cards are on my altar. So let me grab my cards while y'all start shuffling your cards and pulling one. I'll be right back.
All right. My cards are underneath my orchid. Hopefully they'll bring some good.
Orchids?
No. Make sure I got the right deck. These decks in here. Do you put your cards from last week back in when you're shuffling?
I do, because
Yeah,
we
like,
can
if
get
I
a
need to
triple dose of
repeat.
liberation. You never
That's
know
what
what's happening.
exactly.
I don't want to block what the ancestors have for me, so I'm putting on. I'm ready to take whatever they giving me, whatever these goddesses
Listen,
giving. I'm picking
when
up
I
whatever
was
they putting
plotting
down.
when I was plotting my exit strategies from the academy, I was like almost daily pulling a change, transformation, you
Uh-huh.
know, prosperity card. It was like, but I got a lot of cards were repeated for like that time that I was in.
Yeah.
Ed Flo, you look like you might be ready. So you wanna
Yes, ma'am. All right, I got card number 6, which is Sarah Lakali, Divine Lineage.
of course, divine lineage.
Right. So Sarah Lakali is goddess of divine lineage, temple ancestors, element water. Great ancestress Sarah Lakali, meaning Sarah the Black, was an Egyptian prophetess and the patron saint of the Romani people. Oral history says that Saint Sarah had the highest divine lineage. Your ancestors protect the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is you. Divine ones walk beside and within you. Trust. Our embodiment is your ancestors want to remind you that you are not alone. They are rooting for you. They ask you to honor your spirit guides and call upon the power of the divine. Create or nourish your ancestral altar or shrine. Unbury your ancestors. Speak their names. Your divine lineage ancestors may be blood related or culturally or spiritually connected. Our goddess declaration is, I am my sister, and my sister is me, which is next week's initiation. Wow. Okay. Wow.
I love this, and I love that, you know, we literally were just having all this discussion about the ancestors and caring for them and connecting with them, and the ancestors are like, "Yep, that's right."
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The ancestors clocked our teeth.
I also love the blood related or culturally or spiritually connected, because I definitely feel such a strong connection to like my Black women literary ancestors and other folks. So I'm here for that too.
Yes, I love it.
All right. I have two, one for me and one for the community. So the first one I pulled is Noonday Truth, Goddess of Truth, from Benin. She's in the Temple of the Griots, and her element is water. I'm sorry, what were you saying? Oh, I'm sorry, 34, number 34. Noonday, the bold, outspoken wife of Benin Iwa, Legba, was feeling neglected by her husband. Even with several wives, his head easily turned. So Noonday lived her truth, took her own lover, and became her own best friend. Noonday's guidance: get real. What is your truth? Truth telling matters. Being able to hear the truth matters just as much. Embodiment: tell the truth. Each person has their own version. Speak yours. Words have impact. Remember that we all have triggers. Think before you speak and listen with compassion. Be gentle and say calm and truth and stay calm in truth telling conversations. The goddess declaration is: the truth is my friend. I feel like this one resonated with Professor K and Ebony Flow.
I'm always here for taking a lover or multiple.
Mhm, mhm. But yeah, I love this. Like living her truth, she was neglected. She took her own lover. Like, so what are the ways in which I can acknowledge and be honest with myself about what my needs are, and to make sure that I'm meeting those needs. But I also love that she became her own best friend. And so this is amazing. And then the second one that I pulled was number 20. Nancy, which is the shadow of betrayal. So she's in the temple of the shadows. Her element is air. So Anansi, or Kwaku Anansi, the Akan trickster god and sacred clown, snuck into our global folk tales. While Gullah Geechee children heard tales of Aunt Nancy, the trickster spider woman, my Guyanese parents entertained us with Nancy stories about a witty teen spider. Aunt Nancy's shadow guidance: who really betrayed you? Betrayals from others mirror betrayal to yourself. Embodiment: betrayal is a web that disrupts everything you thought you knew. Use discernment in your relationships. Betrayal makes it difficult to trust, but without trust, your relationships are a lie. Trust that no matter what happens and no matter how long it takes, you will survive and thrive. The real question: how have you betrayed or abandoned yourself? Goddess declaration: I am willing to know the truth. I feel like we've pulled Aunt Nancy before. And so actually, you pulled Aunt Nancy for me?
That's right. I don't know I can't remember who pulled it. I just know that Aunt Nancy is still on my altar because that is one card I have not put back because I needed that reminder. Yeah, you pulled it again. You were reading it. I was like, oh yeah, I got to memorize.
You were like whispering along with me.
Yeah, me and Aunt Nancy, we like this.
Yeah. So I love that. Like Aunt Nancy is still coming up for you, and she has come up here today, and so we will continue to work with um the ways in which we have betrayed ourselves and healing wounds from others who have betrayed us. That for myself and for the community. So I'm in and I share.
I appreciate this card because it's not just focused on external, it's like the question of like the betrayal as self-betrayal, right? And the abandonment as self-abandonment, which also reminds me of Tituba, because that was also something that came up with Tituba. But what I love about this is the issue of trust, because I think so many times like these days everybody's like, this is a red flag, this is a green flag, everybody looking for all these flags. And it's just like, but when you're attuned and you're connected to your sense of self and your intuition and what you really want and your ancestors, you don't have to actually worry about how everybody else is moving, because you know what feels right and good and aligned and what doesn't, right? And so instead of like constantly looking for what other people are doing, you just trust what your intuition tells you and what feels good and what feels right. And so a lot of times I think when we get caught up, and I know for me, again, this is why Tituba was like all up in my chest when I was reading that. It's like the way that she literally kind of handed over her power, gave up her freedom, and abandoned herself and betrayed herself, right? And so it's just a reminder, for me, it's always a reminder of like, I've never gone wrong trusting my intuition and in pursuing my pleasure, right? The only times things have gone left is when I abandoned myself or betrayed myself or hit override on the intuition. So this is what stands out for me with this card. But yeah, I definitely remember that this was pulled before. I was trying to look through my notes because the last 2 weeks I've been writing down who's pulling what card, but I didn't do that the first couple of weeks. But I do remember we definitely pulled this card.
And I love that like I pulled truth and betrayal together, right? And so I think they're gonna have some magical manifestations as I reflect on these two opposite sides of a coin together this week.
Yes. And then I pulled 33, which is Mama Kumba Bang or Bang. Mamie Kuma Bang, which is also about speaking up, which I connect with truth as well. So this is the goddess of speaking up from Senegal. The temple is griots. The element is water. Mame Kumba Bang protects the mouth of the Senegal River. When making an offering to her, you must not speak to anyone else coming or going. Sing for her, chant for her, call to her. Give goddess Kumba your voice and she'll be happy. This is her guidance. Speak up, speak out, speak on it. You have a right to be heard. Embodiment. You are betraying yourself by not speaking up. Your words have power. Own your voice. As the old saying goes, stand up for something or fall for anything. Being neutral is not an option. When you stand firmly in your truth, you have thoughts, opinions, beliefs, and convictions. What do you stand for? Tell someone today. And the goddess declaration is I reclaim my voice. I speak out and speak up. So I love this because it also ties into what we've been talking about these last couple of weeks with the YouTube and me like, being more vocal, being more visible on YouTube and things like that. And so one of the things I did last night, because I knew I would be traveling today, like last week I did a YouTube and a live on Tituba, but I hadn't posted the YouTube yet. So last night I posted it on YouTube and did the various things to post it on social media. And I made more, so in the YouTube video, but then, and I also did a Substacks because I like to write. So it was like, so I had like the video version, but then also like the written version where I got into a little bit more details of my own experience with like my unhappily married experience, my happily unmarried journey, my erotic empowerment journey. And I decided to post it for Valentine's Day because I'm like, I feel like this is a narrative that also needs to be present with the other narratives. And I did have a moment because, I'll be putting my business out there where I was just like, and it's really just the tip of the iceberg, truth be told. But I did have a moment of like, will I be perceived as a hater on Valentine's Day? Because I'm posting these quotes about Tituba's Mama Yaya being like, men don't love, they just possess and subjugate. And I'm like, she said what she said. So I think this is speaking to that part. I posted it anyway, but there was almost a hesitancy. And so I think this is speaking to that hesitancy of like, don't hesitate. Like, you said what you said, you know what you want to say, and go on and say it with your chest. So I think that that's what my takeaway from this is like, you know what you want to say what you say. Because I always say it, it's usually like it's like the right after that I'm like, did I go too far or should I have, right? And so, but trusting like if it's in your heart, this like from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so let the mouth speak.
I love this. I love it. All right. Well, as we wrap up, so this week was about resistance and rebirth. So maybe each of us can reflect on one way in which we're going to practice rebirth in our weeks this week. So Eb Flow, how are you going to be reborn this week? What you working on?
Ooh, that's a good question. What am I working on? I want to put some very sacred time aside for working on my love gift, my purpose outside of the daily work that I'm doing, just in regards to children's wellness. And so I am going to hold time for that because I know that's a shift in. I feel like sometimes I hit this fuck that job Fridays and then I'm just resting. and I'm not pouring into some of the other cups and areas that I should be because I'm exhausted. And so I've got to remove some of the things that I'm tired from off of my plate so that I can hold the time for the things that are in my divine purpose. So that's my goal. What about you, Professor K?
I feel like I'm really friendly with the rebirth thing, right? Like I feel like that's just is part of me at this point. So just continuing to embrace that, continue to be intentional about that. One of the other things that it said in this chapter was like we are responsible for our own happiness. Our happiness does not come from another person or place or institution. And so I love that constant reminder as well. But one of the things that I focus on as I'm continuing to design and create the life and the lifestyle and the world that I want to inhabit is not to bring the things that I walked away from into the thing that I'm building. And so I guess that's also another, like, we can be reborn, but don't be bringing everything like, let what died die and don't constantly keep dragging it with you into the next thing. And so I say that to say, like, as I'm looking at my different initiatives that I've talked about, like whether it's like Live Bellevue Writers or the Happily Unmarried and Erotic Empowerment or the Professor K stuff, it's like I'm really being intentional about how I'm setting things up and how I'm systematizing it so that I'm not bringing into it the dread and misalignment and overwork and all of that kind of stuff that I was really intentional about walking away from in the academic space.
I love it. Well, for me, one of the things that we didn't talk a lot about today, but that resonated with me from the reading was also in thinking about I forget what it was called, but the spirit or the soul of the sun and how like literally like it dies every day and it rises again and is reborn every day. And so I love this idea of like rebirth every single day, and every day is a new opportunity to be reborn and to like shed old things that aren't serving you. And so what I'm going to work on this week is continuing to lean into my Afro-Maximalist home decor. And so I've been working on this like Black Girl Magic recharging station in my office. And so it's happening. There's still a ladder there. I'm hanging things. But so I want to finish that project this week so that I have a space in my office for in between meetings, or maybe even sometimes during meetings, turning my camera off, where when I need to like recharge and be reborn, I'll have a space in my office for that. And so I love carving out, like, I don't just have like one meditation Zen space, but how do I, in every room of my house, carve out these little spaces for me to just kind of like reconnect to myself and be reborn. So that is what I'll be working on.
Okay.
All right, goddesses. Well, this is always the highlight of my week. It is always so great to see you and connect with you. And I feel an alchemy, right? Like I do feel that these practices and these readings and these cards, have been transforming my life. And so I'm looking forward to seeing the ways in which we are all continue to rise and are reborn and rebel in this trash world that we're living in these days. But happy Valentine's Day to you too. And I hope that everybody has a lovely, wonderful, amazing weekend. And healing energy and pain-free energy to everyone. And we will connect again next Friday with the Red Lip Alchemy.
Yes.
Good to see you guys. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Yes, same. Love you.
Bye.
Bye.